Good evening, Anjana. Good evening, Ranjini. It's so nice to have you with us for our session of RepARTee this evening. Thank you so much for joining us. For those who don't know Anjana, I'll just give a brief introduction. Anjana is an alumnus of SIFAS, a Bharatanatyam alumnus of SIFAS. She will tell us more about her journey. So without further ado, we will jump into the conversation. Anjana, you are the second alumnus to be featured in our RepARTee, in our series of conversations. And can you just share with us the details of your dance journey in SIFAS? Even I don't know the details, so it would be interesting to hear. Over to you, Anjana.
Okay, firstly, Renuka and Ranjini, good afternoon here in Chennai, and thank you for having me here this afternoon. Really feels nice to be part of SIFAS again in a discussion with Ranjini, who has been on the dance journey with me from when I was a student, and then Renuka, whom I've met several times on trips to Singapore. So my journey in SIFAS began in about 1986, when we moved from New York back to Singapore. And I remember my first Tattadu class was with a teacher named Uma Rao, who was there for about a year. This was followed by Shanta Pundudare teacher, who was my teacher and guru right through till my Arangetram. Along with Shanta teacher, we had a lovely faculty there. We had Dhanadevi Mitradeva, we had Karikudi sir, Krishnamurti sir. So it almost felt like, although we were dance students, we were also music students, because we were constantly running between all the classes. And
you remember
it all felt like, yeah, it all felt like you know, one huge artistic family together. So the lovely thing about SIFAS was, one, they had a very structured program like you do now. We did the 8-year part-time course. But it was not just an institution where you ended up in class twice a week. I think the beautiful thing was the interaction with all the teachers, all the faculty, and all the visiting artists who were called in from India right through the year. So from an early age, I think they set the standard and the bar that this is what classical music and dance is about, and this is where you have to go. And I think that is really important, even more than what you're taught, because in your mind, you already know how far the journey is, and it creates that sense of awe in you.
So was Shanta teacher the only teacher then, or were there other dance teachers as well?
Shanta teacher was there. There was also somebody from Sri Lanka. I don't know, Ranjini, if you remember her name. She was a much younger teacher.
That was later, right? Or
much later? Yeah,
much
I think
later.
then mainly it was Shanta teacher who was handling all the classes.
Shanta teacher until Sita teacher, I think, came in 94 or 95, I think.
That's right.
You remember? So I think then Girish Panikar came.
Correct.
And then had Sita teacher. And all of them started joining. But otherwise in SIFAS in those days, it was only one dance teacher.
Okay.
One faculty for dance.
But it wasn't in Starlight Road, right? That was a different campus.
Balestier Road.
No, it was in Balestier Road. And that's why I keep telling everyone, you know, it wasn't a great campus in the sense, you know, I still remember the rickety steps and everything. But it was just that the atmosphere and ambience that was created that really felt like home. You know, you didn't need all the posh air conditioning and the fancy office, but it was just like always like coming back home. And that was the magic that SIFAS was able to create, which still remains with me.
So how long did your journey from, you know, from your Tattadu to your Arangetram take?
Yeah, so after I started, I did the full 8 years course. And in 94, I finished. It was just timely because I finished also my 12th grade there. I studied at UWC. And I didn't do my Arangetram because I had already decided I was coming back to Kalakshetra to study. And so I left immediately after my 8th year exam and joined Kalakshetra. I in fact came back to Singapore after my 4-year course and did my Arangetram under Shanta teacher at the Jubilee Hall.
Okay.
In, that would have been 2002.
Was it 2002? Teacher, well, didn't teacher leave in 2000 or she came back from Toronto?
She came back to conduct the Arangetram, yes.
So that's why I wasn't in Singapore, I think, at that time. I wasn't in, I had already left to the US by then.
But I invited her and Dana teacher to come back from Canada to conduct the Arangetram. So I did it here in Singapore.
Yeah, that's great, Anju. I mean, I guess for us, we were all like, wow, you know, Anju took that bold step of moving on to Kalakshetra after when we were all in class together. And after your 8th exam, I still remember you were saying you were leaving for India now to pursue arts full time. So how was that experience for you going to Kalakshetra? I think having been in Singapore so many years, obviously, and then moving to India after that for good. How was that experience for you?
I don't know at which point I suddenly decided I wanted to take dance full-time or join Kalakshetra. I think one seed was my mother had been a part-time student at Kalakshetra earlier studying Veena, but she never took it seriously after that. But there's always that Kalakshetra association in my mind. And then I just found by the time I was finishing my 10th and 11th, we were spending so much time in SIFAS besides school and home that it seemed like the next best thing to do and the most conclusive next step that I could take. So when I finished and in fact, that's the reason why I moved from a local school to UWC. I actually studied in St. Teresa's Convent and finished my O-levels. But when I finished my O-levels, I knew I was going to dance full time and I didn't want to tax myself with the A-levels. And so I moved into the IB system at United World College, which gave me a more flexible schedule. The move to India I thought would be a tough one because I had never lived in India. It had been many years since I left India. I was born in India, stayed for a few years in Mysore before I moved to New York. So I was not really sure of how it would all unfold. But I think the criteria in my mind or my focus was that I wanted to do dance and music. That was very clear. So everything else was secondary.
Did your family move to India as well, or was that a decision that you took on your own?
No, my family was still in Singapore. My father's still working here.
So as a teenager, you decided to move by yourself and do this in India. So that's a big decision.
Yes, that was a big decision.
And you decided to forego traditional college and go to Kalakshetra.
Correct. That too. And I didn't find that a very difficult decision for some reason, because I think it was very clear. This is what I wanted to do. So there was no issue about that. And my parents were comfortable with me staying in Chennai. So that was how I joined Kalakshetra. And never regretted it. I mean, right after I left SIFAS, I was with the Dhananjayans for a year, studying with them. And then the following year, I joined Kalakshetra as a full-time student. So, I got 1 year off because Kalakshetra and SIFAS had a tie-up. And therefore, since I completed the course, I was able to get 1 year off.
Actually, I wanted to ask you, you were also doing violin in SIFA. So you finished your 8th year as well, right? In
violin, I did the 5th year exam, I remember. And then the 6th year, I didn't complete the 8th year exam.
Complete 8th year.
Yes. And I was learning vocal also at that point with under Shobha Shekhar, who was teaching outside SIFAS.
I remember you were learning vocal and a teacher, you were learning violin.
Correct.
So what made you decide then you want to do professional dancing instead? Like how take up Bharatanatyam versus the other, art form?
Yeah. Right. I think although I always loved music and vocal and violin, I seem to be spending more time in dance than in the other two. All three were important to me, but I never put my mind to being a musician for whatever reason. I think Shanta teacher was largely the inspiring factor there. So deciding on dance was kind of a single focus.
So what years did you spend in Kalakshetra?
Kalakshetra was from 95 to 98.
Okay.
I did my diploma in Kalakshetra. And then after that, I didn't continue. They have a post-diploma for 2 years, which I decided not to join because I got married also then and moved out of Chennai again for a few years before I came back finally in 2005.
So in Kalakshetra, you stayed on campus and did the program?
No, I didn't. Actually, I stayed in RepARTee because I had an aunt who was living there.
Oh, okay.
But I didn't stay with them. I had my own apartment. Also, my music teacher was in the same building. Her name was Savitri Satyamurthy, a famous violinist who was quite a taskmaster and who wanted me also to be a musician instead of a dancer. So right from Kalakshetra, I would rush home and then I would have to spend time in music class until it was time to sleep. So in that sense, it was morning to night, dance music, dance music.
So tell us about your Kalakshetra routine.
Kalakshetra routine, yeah. Kalakshetra routine was, see, honestly speaking, coming from SIFAS, where we had a really strong foundation and where the syllabus was very, very similar to what was happening in SIFAS, that part wasn't very difficult because I was again starting from Tattaduvas, even though I had finished a Margam in SIFAS. But I never felt bored because I knew that there's some fundamentals which I needed to work on. Whatever said and done, we only used to go to class twice a week. So I really wanted to correct my form and I knew this was only 3 years I had to do that. But the Kalakshetra experience was really beautiful because I think it was the ambience and the people you meet where you suddenly find where art and life somehow come together. It doesn't become just a course that you attend anymore. So I think that was a turning point when I think dance and music became sort of a part of my life, so to say. The outlook on what art means, probably it was also hearing a lot about Rukmini Devi while I was in Kalakshetra, reading her works. And that dance was not just something you did outside your working hours as a hobby or to lose weight or to just keep in touch with culture. But everything from the time you wake up to how you are outside the dance class was influenced after going to Kalakshetra.
I think that must have been such a different experience, having done it part-time, schooling, and then like absolutely just immersed in the arts. I think must have been
absolutely. And you learn so many other things in Kalakshetra. You know, you watch a lot. You don't dance too much as a junior, but watching all the dance dramas, watching the rehearsals, watching your seniors get the place ready, putting those beautiful columns, arranging the little altar on the sides, that attention to detail and aesthetics, and then always hearing music from one cottage, it'll be music, one cottage will be the flute, veena, and being surrounded in that atmosphere was, I think, the most beautiful experience of being in Kalakshetra.
That's brilliant. I'll never forget after you left for Kalakshetra, and of course all of us still were there in Singapore. And so teacher used to always tell us, "See, Anju paara, kalamiyaachu Kalakshetra ka bold." She was so proud that you decided to take this next step and actually move there and do this full time.
So was Shanta teacher from Kalakshetra herself?
Yes.
Okay.
Very much from Kalakshetra. She finished her post-diploma and after that she went to Nalanda and also did a course there, her master's, and then came back. Okay. So I think that Kalakshetra training and ideology was instilled from when I was very young. And since SIFAS was always affiliated with Kalakshetra, it seems like such a natural progression to what I was doing already.
Exactly. And she was, remember Anju, how much of a perfectionist. So she always had this thing about making sure that everything was done in the pure Kalakshetra Bani and how Ate used to teach everything and keep talking about that to us. And so, you know, I think that...
Yeah, so it's... I think if any one of us had gone to Kalakshetra at that time, we wouldn't have felt like fish out of water.
Yes.
Because, we had the mental image of what Kalakshetra would be like. In fact, she was such a stickler for perfection. I remember once we were learning, the first Varnam that we learned was Ye Magwa and Danyasi. And she didn't remember the third hand. And it was not even about the full hand. She didn't remember if it was one Shikhara or two Shikharas. And she walked all the way up from the second floor to her room on the fourth floor, took out a book, checked, came back, and then taught us. And I remember even the discipline of being there at 2 o'clock, she'd be there at 1:55, always dressed neatly in a sari and completely immersed. And today I'm amazed because, you know, when you have back-to-back classes, you know how difficult it is to focus and to really, you know, be there with your kids at whatever level they are. And she was able to have that kind of focus and interest. And I remember classes used to start at 2 o'clock in the afternoon.
Yeah.
And she would be as fresh as she would be at 8 o'clock
at 9 o'clock. And do you remember all her stick books, how we used to draw in those books, and then she'll make us draw the stick figure. Of course, those days there was no video taking or anything, so every one of us had to bring the books, and we had to like draw these items out, and she'll check it.
Yes, I mean, I think that was the important part of the process, because I still have that book with me. And in fact, just last week, I happened to open the book and I saw a little note written from Uma Rao teacher to me, signed 87. And I have not been in touch with Uma teacher for years now. And I got her number and actually WhatsApped it to her day before yesterday. And she was so happy to see it. But that actual process of, when you open and you see somebody's handwriting, when I see my own handwriting, when I was 12 years old, I've written Pataka, Tripataka. When I have Shanta teacher's handwriting, she has beautiful calligraphic-like handwriting. In fact, that's what I remember about the notes. Even I would just look at it and it seemed like a design to me. So the actual writing of these adavas, putting it into tala, I think all that helps you at a fundamental level. It's much easier with the video camera these days, but believe me, half of it is not in your brain. It's only in that device to be kept there forever.
No, and that's what I keep telling, some of the younger kids today. I said, you all rely on these video and the gadgets so much now, but even today, if you take one of the items maybe I've done like 20, 30 years ago, we remember, I think, Anju, it was ingrained so much in us that I think we remember the pieces.
Internalize it completely.
Yes.
I mean, it was inside you, and once inside you, it would just stay there.
Absolutely. That internalization, that process, that unsaid process of writing down. And when you write down, then you have your own doubts, which you clear up yourself. So that, I think, helps the learning process. And also the attention to detail, being there in that moment when your teacher is talking, the video is not on. So if you miss it, that next class you'll be in trouble. It's another week before you meet teacher again. So then that complete focus of, shutting everything else outside and being focused is an important part of that learning, which is currently a little more difficult with technology these days.
And maybe the kids also these days, right? I think they've become a lot more advanced. I think we all just did whatever our teachers did. I mean, you don't come to dance class in a practice sari, you're sent home. So,
and I think parents didn't bother either. My parents didn't care if I went home crying. They would never call SIFAS and complain about their teacher. And the teacher wouldn't care also. I remember Shanta teacher and Dana teacher not caring a bit about what the parent would have to say. So I think parents also, gave that leeway to the teacher.
Absolutely. So Anju, how's your journey been post Kalakshetra? Like
post Kalakshetra. Yeah, post Kalakshetra, it's been really, actually, I mean, touch wood, I have to say, it's been a really fulfilling journey, because I felt like Kalakshetra was a springboard, and I was able to move in many directions from there. And I really have to mention 4 people who are very important in that post Kalakshetra journey. One is Shijit Krishna, whom I'm still training under for the past 10 years.
Who we are very familiar with as well. We've done.
Yes, I know he's been doing a lot of work for SIFAS as well. And I started working with him from 2010. And now we have a foundation called Sahridaya Foundation, started by 5 core artists. And the second was Arvind Kumaraswamy, who gave me the connection back to Singapore again. Gave me the first experience of working on group choreography, because till then I was always doing something solo, and I'd never really tried my hand at choreography, and that was an important introduction to me. Third was Gauri Ramnarayan, who is a playwright here, also a Carnatic music singer who has gone into theater direction. So that experience in theater really helped me in Abhinaya, I think, in how to dramatize something, in the importance of characterization, nuancing of Abhinaya. And then the 4th person is, of course, Dr. Raghuraman, whom I did my PhD under, because that brought the academic side into my life. So it really went in, I can say, clear four paths from the time I left Kalakshetra. And I was lucky that I had a continuous journey. I never took a long break from dancing ever.
Yeah, that's brilliant.
So I think I mean, you have spoken about how fulfilling it has been, and you mentioned your PhD. That would be our next question. There are people, so many people who do dance, but don't necessarily go into the academic aspect of it. And congratulations on completion of your PhD. So why don't you tell us about how this whole idea of doing a PhD came about, and more about the topic that you chose, and the process itself.
Yeah, I think one thing was, I think from the time we started learning in SIFAS, the importance of theory, which was there, which is really beautiful, because there are a lot of dancers who learn in the Guru Shishya Parampara, where the practice is given more importance. So SIFAS instilled that idea of theory always being part of the training. And of course, that continued in Kalakshetra. But after Kalakshetra, I found that practice hours were much less, because you're not part of an institution where you're dancing forcibly every day. And so while the practice continued, I realized I did have time on my hands, and this was what I was doing full time. So then I had a lovely peer group here in Chennai, all from different schools, which is also very nice, because we got to meet so many people of the artist community, not just limiting ourselves to our own little pool of Kalakshetra friends. And we collectively decided to do a master's because we had time, and it was a distance education program under Dr. Raghuraman, who was based in Chennai. So while this was distance, we were able to go to him directly for classes. And when we finished our master's, okay, we still had time. Shall we do a PhD? So I said, yeah, just do a PhD. At that point, I was not very sure, because I liked academics, but I felt that I wanted to be a performer first. But again, time was again on my hands, and I said, okay, I can join quietly. If I quit at any point, nobody's going to know. That's how it just started. And really thankful that I didn't stop at any point. It's like the hare and the tortoise, just quietly keep on chugging along, no pressure on you to finish it, because you're not a full-time student. And in 4 or 5 years, actually, I finished the PhD in 2014. 2015, actually, we were done, and we went to hand in our theses. But because of some issue at the department, we had to get that thesis translated into Tamil, because it was a Tamil department. And so the whole Viva got postponed by years. And it was only last month after the lockdown when finally the online Viva was conducted and the PhD was conferred. So
did you do it with a group, or was it?
Yeah, I keep saying we because 4 of us traveled together. The 4 friends of ours who joined the PhD program together and got stuck in the same issue of not being called for the Viva, though the PhD was submitted. So individually, we were called one after the other. And in the group, I think I was the last one to get my interview. So I finished mine at the end. But the interesting thing was about the PhD is academics in Bharatanatyam is pretty new over the last 20 years. Now people are showing a lot more interest in the theory and the practice. But what you learn mostly from a PhD is, of course, being a full-time PhD candidate is very important, because that interaction with your students and the presenting in conferences is a very important part of it. But also just entering a program like this makes you understand that there has to be some kind of methodology to your reading, to your writing, to what you present. So I think that is what the process of the PhD has taught me. The very focused kind of reading, and also presenting a paper, what goes into the presenting of a paper, how the theory can be adapted to practice. So these are the things that I learned in my PhD. And the PhD has, this is just the beginning. It's like an Arangetram, because getting a PhD is just the title, but then this is where it all starts, the further research and the studying.
So after your thesis that you wrote your book, right? Or
no, actually the two completely different things. My thesis was based on, in my master's, I did it on a comparative study of rasa in Tolkappiyam and Natishastra. Then I continued that further in my PhD. I did Shringara Rasa and its evolution in Bharatanatyam. So that was my PhD topic.
Okay.
So, if you want to talk about the book now, the book that I published recently is called A Grammar of Dance, the Arangetra Kade. And it talks about the dance details that are in the Silappithikaram. So that was a completely different project. And again, that was not a planned one, because a couple of years ago, I had to take a forced break from my dance because of an injury, and I was dancing much less So while all that physiotherapy was happening, it took a good 2 years to start dancing again. And in that vacuum, like I told you, I'd never taken a break from dancing from when I was 16. So this is huge void, and that's when Raghuraman sir stepped in and said, well, that's okay, that's perfectly fine. Now it's time to use your brain. You've used your body enough. Now let's do something for the dance field. He said, why don't you translate one chapter of the Silappatikaram? Tamil works are not very well known, I think, because of lack of good translations as well. So that's how I started working on that 2 years ago, and that culminated in a book which was published last month.
So what is it about? I mean, your book.
Okay, so the Silappatikaram is, most of us will be familiar with the story, is a love triangle of 3 characters, Kovalan, Kannagi and Madhavi, right? But besides this epic story, which is drama in itself, the author Ilango Adigal has kind of sneaked into it so much of cultural history of the Tamil people. That includes the arts. So through the character of Madhavi, who's a dancer, there's a whole chapter called the Arangetra Kade, which tells you about the technique of dance, how the auditorium was built, who were the accompanists, what were the qualities of an accompanist, what was the pattam given to her after the Arangetram. So it's actually, it's a whole lot of dance history which is woven into the epic. So that's why I chose this particular canto. It's about 170 lines in Tamil. Okay. And I've also included the commentaries by 2 commentators who came about 1,000 years later. That is Adiyarka Nallar and Arumpada Urayasiriyar. Now the commentators are important because the original author just mentions some terms in passing in the story because he's not writing a treatise on dance, right? But the commentators help you by taking these terms out and explaining them, also telling you about the dance details available at the times they lived in the 10th AD. So you actually see how dance history has progressed from 1 AD or 2 AD where Silappatikaram was written to 10 AD where these 10 AD and 12 AD where these 2 commentators lived. So you kind of are able to piece a puzzle together of how dance has moved. And then from that to today, you can again compare and see how much dance has traveled to the 21st century.
Right? I mean, you actually took a 2,000-year-old text which had Bharatanatyam in it, and then you have written about it, rather translated it, in 2020. And
yes, that's so brilliant, Anju. Wow.
Yeah, I mean, it was actually an eye-opener for me too, and that's why I wanted to publish this book, because although I've been in the dance field for like now 2.5 decades, and I knew of the Silappatikaram, I knew Madhavi as a dancer, but I really didn't know that all these dance details I'd never really gone into studying them, because again, I think there was a lack of a good translation, and I never spent possibly time on it because of all my dancing. But I think it's really important for dancers to know their history, right? We spend so much time studying the Natya Shastra and the Abhinaya Darpana. So this tells you about texts which are important in this part of the land, because this is where Bharatanatyam evolved from, right? So it's important also to unearth these texts and to see how they have influenced dance as it is practiced today.
So Arangetra Kadai means what is Kadai?
Kadai is like a canto.
Okay.
So yeah, there are 30 cantos in the Silappatikaram, and this is the 3rd one. Okay. So Arangetra Kadai is the canto which deals with Madhavi's Arangetra.
Okay. How interesting. Yeah, I'm looking forward to actually reading it. I know I need to get a copy soon and really.
Yeah, please do. Yeah. I mean, I think it'll be interesting for people in Singapore also, especially because I think the level of Tamil is very high. And so they will easily be able to read the Tamil which has been given and then understand the transliteration and translation as well. And also, I've also made it very reader friendly. I didn't want it to be full of jargon and it's kind of like, a textbook which little font kind of packed away in your library. Mm-hmm. So it's designed for a student with lots of space in between to take notes. It's not a coffee table book. It's a worker's manual. And I really hope that youngsters are inspired to know more about where Bharatanatyam comes from this book.
Yeah, that's
really impressive.
And so you did both your book and the PhD. It was in parallel, right? It was
yeah,
around.
but actually the thing was, Ranjini, I remember I had submitted my thesis in about 2015. So I was free of the work on the PhD. I was just awaiting my Viva. So I had again time on my hands, to write again. And then I was not dancing so much till last year again. So that gap gave me a good time to really sit with this book.
See, that's what is brilliant.
Yeah.
You got the PhD on the one hand and wrote the book on the other hand as well.
It's just a coincidence that they all
it happened at the same time. Yeah.
Yes,
Superwoman indeed.
That's quite a surprise. Actually, I never knew they would call us for the Viva. I expected, okay, another year, 2 years. And then 1 week after publishing the book, I get a letter saying your Viva is announced for such and such a date. I was like, oh, okay.
That's brilliant. Good. I think just wanted to check with you. So you know that we are all SIFAS alumni, right? And what do you think? Why so few alumni take to the arts on a full-time basis? I mean, and I wanted to hear your point of view on this. I mean, after you've been one of the few alumni or who have actually taken this full-time, so
yeah.
So wanted to get your perspective and your views on this.
I think there are many factors. See, one is, I think, where you decide to base yourself. And those who pass out of SIFAS and who are based in Singapore or going abroad may wonder how sustainable this would be as a full-time profession, even financially. So that is one consideration. The second is, I think, peer pressure also, because when you're 18, 19, everybody's talking about colleges and other academic courses. And I don't know how cool it is to say that you're going to do Bharatanatyam full time. You're worried about the opportunities. And then there is also a mindset that the performing arts can always be done as a hobby or as a pastime. That's what everybody around you will influence you to think. But I think that serious artists know that at some point in their life, it's just not possible to do two things parallelly, because this takes up not just your physical time, but also, I think, a mental space.
Yeah.
At some point in your life, you have to decide if you want to be a professional, you have to shelf other things aside and go for it. And I think your heart is the one that calls it more than the head. Because if the head was to analyze it, and if I had made an Excel sheet which I fed into a computer, it would definitely said, don't go for dance, right? Yeah. So I think you just have to take that call from the heart.
And in relation to that, I mean, what were some of the challenges? I mean, you personally, when you decided and you took that decision, but I'm sure you'd have faced a lot of challenges along the way. So
yeah, I think challenges is the right word, because in the sense, because this is what I wanted to do. Yeah. I was so focused on it, everything else didn't matter. Like, even like you said, the move back to India after living in Singapore for 7-8 years, even the daily inconvenience that we encounter here in India didn't bother me, because my focus was going to class, getting better at my dance and my music, and then coming home, and everything else just fell into place along with it. I think that because that priority was there in my mind. The challenges, of course, they keep coming up. Okay, they keep coming up right through. I think any path, any field you take will have that. It's not easy. In dance, a little bit harder because there's no set course. It's not like you finish, you do your master's, and then you join this thing, and then you move up the ladder. There's somebody evaluating you, or HR telling you, you can move to the next level. You are your own HR, you are your own publicity manager, everything, right? So keeping yourself going continuously, self-motivation is, you could say it's a challenge. It's also a plus point, but you need to plan your life a little bit. You can't just be a dreamer if you want to go somewhere. You have to balance the two. Yeah, I think that would be the challenge. And also because dance deals with the body. As you get older, understanding, fine-tuning your body, really listening to it. You can't dance. I can't dance now like I did in my 20s. I have to listen to my body and learn to adjust myself. So those things, I would say, are the challenges of taking dance up. Yeah.
Apart from that, you don't have any other what can I say? I mean, you don't feel, oh, maybe this is not something that I shouldn't have done. You are happy that you took up dance, and you're saying this was what I decided my life would be, and I'm happy I made that decision.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's the only one thing I can say with total conviction, is that every day I can wake up and say, I'm looking forward to this day. And I don't know many people at my age and in the career who can say that quite confidently. And so that part has been extremely fulfilling, which is why you just don't let other negative things get in the way. I think the only time I feel a little bit stressed out is when the 31st comes and I look at my bank account and I see it's not very much fatter than the last month. That can be a little worrying. Yeah, besides the financial part of it, I think that for me personally, at least, it's been a very fulfilling and very comforting journey, because also I don't think I pay much attention to what is happening around me. In a way, I'm like a horse with blinkers, just keep doing my work and don't let the politics of things really affect what I'm doing. And really getting better at what I do is what really is important for me. So yeah, so I would say yes, I'm really, I don't look, no regrets, absolutely.
So I wanted to ask you this question. Our Indian arts especially is so guru oriented, right? I mean, it used to follow the Gurukula tradition earlier, and you learn and you imbibe so much from the guru, and you speak so much about your guru. So and you said you're still training along with Shijit. So when is the time that you feel that okay, I have imbibed all this from my guru, and then now is the time for me to be my own person?
Yeah. Actually, I've not really thought much about that. It's only when you asked it that I'm really thinking back on it. In that sense, I don't think I've planned my career journey, that this is the point when I'm going to leave the institution, leave everybody and start off on my own. Okay. The one thing I really enjoy about this field is the fact that we can work with people. In that way, I'm a very people person.
Yeah.
I think if I look at it, I'm like on a long leash with my gurus. Like I can't take that leash off. Okay, I'm stuck on it, but I'm given a long leash, so I can roam wherever I want to, but come back to the comfort of home. And being part of Sahridaya Foundation, although it's not my own conception, Shijit is the director, he's the founder, we all have a space within the foundation to do our own work. And that's really important because we do a lot of things together, but all 5 of us have an individual career path as well. And that's important for me. So you don't feel claustrophobic or confined, because at the same time I'm doing my own work on the side, and then we also come together and do great work. So in that, if I were to answer your question, I'm very much attached, but again, like a sanchari, I go around, keep coming back to the Pallavi.
Tell us a little bit about some work that you've done as a group in Sahridaya. I'm sure our listeners would love to hear about what sort of work you are putting out there.
Yep. Sahridaya Foundation, we started it about 10 years ago, 2010. And both education and performance were the 2 wings which we were focusing on. So the work that we did coming together was the RepARTee company, which we established. And we had artists not only from within Sahridaya, but even from outside applying and coming in as full-time dancers working with us. So the person who spearheads all the choreography is Shijit. And the biggest work we've done so far is a work called Don Quixote, which was an adaptation of a Spanish novel where everything was made from the scratch. So that was lovely being part of that process, because I remember the book arriving, a really thick book of the translation, which all of us read. And then from there came the making of the music, adapting, there's no lyrics, right? It's in English. So using, I don't think we didn't had any lyrics in it. It was completely melody based and jati. So the whole thing came to life from a book. So I think that was one of the biggest works we've done. Besides that, of course, Shijit's other works like Ramkatha, Pravaha, Martian, all these have been his individual choreographies where we are RepARTee dancers executing what he wants. So in that sense, the RepARTee company was a new kind of work that we did. And we have different inputs because we have Manjari Chandrasekhar, Professor Chandrasekhar's daughter with us, whose sense of abhinaya and dance comes from a very different perspective, a different old worldly feel. So she brings that to us. Then there's Jyoti, Shijit's wife, who's a musician, who does the composing for us. So there's an in-house work that is happening, which is quite unique, I think, from other organizations. Then Akhila Ramnarayan, who's a writer. So she's there always for the research part of it, write up our work. And then Shijit and me and Manjari are involved in the training and the dancing. So it really feels like, doing all the work yourselves instead of outsourcing it to different people. So that's, I think, the biggest contribution that Sarhadi has done for me in terms of learning that kind of production work.
And I think having that kind of a camaraderie would be very fulfilling as well. So
absolutely,
yeah.
Because yeah, it's not very often that you find 5 artists who have, their own individual careers happening, coming together. That doesn't really happen much. So really, really thankful for that.
And this Don Quixote, you have traveled with it around the world?
Quite a lot. We were on a 2-month tour in the US. We did about 19 shows in about 2 months. Yeah, it was back to back. And along with that, we did a lot of lecture demonstrations, which was great in schools and universities. And then we've of course been traveling in India with Don Quixote as well. And then thanks to the pandemic, we have put a stop to everything for now.
I know. And how, coming to the pandemic, how did you cope during the pandemic? It was like very tough for artists in general, I suppose.
Yeah, I think so. But I mean, honestly speaking, I actually really enjoyed the last 12 months. I know a lot of people, suffered because businesses and, their work suffered. But in terms of, not being able to travel or perform, that didn't affect me too much, because I found after a long time, I had time to just sit quietly. The morning, even just sitting and looking at my garden is a luxury I couldn't afford before. Usually I'm hustling, bustling out of the house by 8, and I'm back in the evening. So this just gave me time to just sit back, do a lot of reading. I've joined a lot of study groups, studying various aspects of dance, watching a lot of dance. So this 1 year has been good in a way. I feel sometimes we just need to get away from that rat race and just sit quietly and just also think where you're heading, what you want to do with your dance. All these things have been kind of mulling.
I think you're so correct. I think I completely agree with you. In this past year, it has been so important to just hold back. Like you rightly said, we were all in the rat race, and the urine dance. We were, working people were running around, and I think this kind of gave you that opportunity to pull back. And,
correct. And then also, I think even in terms of teaching and all that, I started thinking a lot more. Even the foundation as itself, what we wanted to give to the students. When you don't have time for that when you're rushing around a lot. You need that time to think, because you have time here to work with your students online. You have, more hours, more time, no stress about, having to do an annual day show or, they're moving to the next year. So I think even in terms of teaching, what I want to teach, how I wanted to teach, all that has slowly started surfacing in my mind in a much more clear fashion.
That's brilliant. Good, Anju. I think, this is a very cliche question, but you are a SIFAS alumni who's a full-time dancer now. So maybe some words of wisdom to some of our aspiring dancers. And a lot of them, I know there is a lot of the youngsters today who are thinking there is whether they should do this full-time or they should, like what you said, right? Whether you should do a corporate career. Obviously, now all the more because it's becoming so advanced and everybody's running, as you said. People may want to go into a full-time corporate career. So what do you have for those who really want to take this up as a full-time career, being one who did yourself from SIFAS? What is your advice to them?
Yeah. See, I don't know if I'm old or wise enough to advise, but maybe from seeing what is around me, or at least my personal journey, I think
personal experience.
More from personal experience, I would say one, like I said, being a horse with blinkers and staying on your track, because there is no substitute to hard work. Everything else that comes, the PR work, the publicity, all that can happen on the side. That's only secondary, but your work has to keep going. And how do you do that? Each one has to decide their own methodology for that. Second is to keep all the negativity out of your life, because it's easy to get caught up in the rat race. Who's being called for the next award? Who's been chosen for this festival? You can constantly go on about that. These things are not in your control. So you just let them go and you just focus on your own work, because the more you work, one day you'll be ready. And when you're given that opportunity, you have to be there. You have to deserve that opportunity that is given to you, right? That's the only way you can move forward. Second is, of course, it's important. Finances are also important. Okay, it's not a hobby or pastime. You have to be smart about about working in that aspect of it. And largely what teaching is one outlet, the immediate outlet to ensuring that money is trickling in slowly. And I think opportunities come if people are convinced that you're good and that you're focused on what you're doing. That is also there. So it may take years, but when somebody wants quality, finally they'll come looking for you if they believe in what you do. So again, it comes back to that hard work thing. There's no, I've not found that there's a separate track where you can go and ensure that all these will be fulfilled. I think you have to just believe in the system and be smart. You, like I said, you have to be a dreamer, but you also have to be practical. Look out for the right opportunities, take what comes to you and do it 100%. Whether you're sure of being paid this much or you have to invest your 100% before you can expect anything to come your way. I think that's what I can offer.
And actually on that topic of finance you were talking about, right? So teaching, yes, definitely that is a stable income. But I think what is your view on, if you teach but you're also a performing artist, do full-time dancers actually make money in India or anywhere in the world as a performer?
It is difficult as a performer. Most of the time, what you get for the first, say, 10 years of your career, I think a lot of money does go out from your own hand, especially when you want quality productions. You're doing your own work, you don't get enough of funding, you do end up looking for some kind of fundraising, either from your own family or from outside. But I think over time, I find that people who have seen your work are willing to invest that money in you. And it's not always about looking out for them. It's also about presenting quality every single time so that you're noticed. And then somehow the money does slowly trickle in. But the money lies largely, I think, in the teaching and in doing workshops. So that is an important area to cultivate for yourself. Because that is what actually, for me, that's what sustains me. What I get from my teaching and from workshops, what I also put into performance. If you at some point do manage to make it as a top ranking performing artist, you could probably perform around the world and make enough. But again, see, the shelf life of a performing artist is also short. It doesn't go on and on. So I think building yourself up in multiple areas is important from the beginning. And I think these days there are definitely more opportunities than there were 20 years ago. More organizations, more people willing to pay for your art. I mean, I think earlier, like I said, that idea of dance and music being a hobby is slowly seeping out. People have seen the value in it. And also today, I find that a lot of people are disturbed by things going around them. And for them, dance is a lot of solace. Like even in our student base, we have more and more adults coming who have learned dance when they were young, who have given up and who want to build it into their lives again. Huge community of people like that are looking to relieve their stress. And in that way, that's one big contribution that we can do as dancers today.
That's extremely good advice, Anju. I think that's very valuable and very necessary for the dancers here, especially as when you're living abroad and more. That leads me again. Do you think then coming to Chennai? So obviously, many people are in Singapore now. The US has a huge dance population as well, and across the world. So do you think it's very necessary for them to come and spend time in India? And how much time do you think is good, or is that subjective?
Yeah, I think it's important definitely to go back to the source wherever you are. You can be in Chennai also and disconnected from what's happening, but really connecting yourself back to the source of what you really need to fuel yourself is important. How this thing is difficult to say. Like I remember when I was studying in Singapore, my parents were very insistent that every year I went back for a month during the holidays and spent my time working with different teachers, doing small little things before going back. So I think cumulatively it's important. But if you can afford it in terms of the time and the money, and if you can come in every year for a month or two, or even if it's 2 weeks, it's not about the quantity, but it's about the quality. What you take back with you, which is going to inspire you to work on your own for the next few months till you have time again. And today with technology, with Zoom, with recordings available, with the ability to communicate with teachers, I think the learning, the connection is much more than it was earlier. So it's not impossible at all these days to do it. But again, it's a mindset. It's how much do you want to do it?
Sure. Okay, great.
So thank you so much, Anjana, for sparing the time to have this conversation with us. And we at SIFAS have also been missing live performances and live shows in the last year or so. So I hope, those things come back into our life sooner rather than later. And I hope we can see you back in Singapore, and perhaps, you can we can collaborate, and you can work with SIFAS and our students on something in the near future. Yeah, let's keep our fingers crossed.
Happy to have you back, and looking forward to seeing reading a copy of your book, and having it in SIFAS as well for our students to actually grab a copy.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me here. Really enjoyed talking to both of you.
Thank you.
And wish you all the very best.
Thank you.
Yeah. Bye.
Bye.